In a few days, the world as we know it may change irrevocably. It is an emotional and powerful moment for us to perform for you today one of Dmitri Shostakovich's works, only days before the US presidential elections. Shostakovich was born at the beginning of the 20th century, and throughout his life, he witnessed crucial changes in the world caused by charismatic pseudo-leaders that promised great new lives to those who would fight whichever social or ethnic group stayed in the way. Beginning with the murder of the Romanov family and thus the end of the Tsarist period, Shostakovich lived through the Bolshevik, the communist regime, the Second World War, and the Cold War. He was in Leningrad during the siege, during the first months of the siege, and saw what war and discrimination against a race, nation, or ethnic group can cause: death, destruction, and endless despair. While an average of 4,000 to 6,000 people died in Leningrad during the siege per day by starvation or killed by enemy fire, Shostakovich went on to write one of the most telling works of survival, dignity, and human resilience, his 7th symphony named the Leningrad Symphony. The work was premiered by the last surviving Soviet music ensemble, and the history of that performance made the stuff of legend. The concertmaster collapsed and died on the way to a rehearsal of starvation. The conductor was so emaciated that he had to conduct seated. Most of the musicians could not hold their instruments for more than 10 minutes at a time. The only time the symphony was played throughout was during the premiere. The premiere was broadcast on loudspeakers throughout Leningrad. It was heard by every single person in Leningrad and by the German army surrounding the city. Shostakovich described it. It is about the people who have stopped believing because the cup of evil has run over. He also once said, "Art kills the silence." And how else could he have told the stories of the many thousands who died during the communist regime but through his music? As many of us who grew up and lived before 1989 in Eastern Europe, the communist bloc, as it was called, Shostakovich had a hard time reconciling with the idea that colleagues, friends, and entire families could and did perish in political jails on a daily basis. Thousands of people died without anyone ever finding out the answers to the big questions. How? Where did they die? And where were they buried? Shostakovich considered each of his works a tombstone for his friends. His life and legacy may very well be a reminder to all of us that discrimination of any kind and any promises of progress and greatness based on eliminating a minority, an ethnic or a social group, will certainly have a profound, irrevocable effect on us, the world of today. Shostakovich's first trio, the work we are performing today, was dedicated to Ioana Galu, a young woman he met while he was treated for tuberculosis in Crimea. He fell in love with her and did not move on with his life until he got word that later on she got married and had children on her own. Initially named Poem, the trio was completed when Shostakovich was only 17. It is true composed, with small sections blending into each other. This work shows a different musical voice of Shostakovich, a different voice that we know of him. It is based on the opening lyrical theme. You will keep hearing that theme repeated throughout the work. In our view, this work speaks of an impossible love, of a person who loves somebody whom they will never ever have.